Ever felt a strong disdain towards modern society? Do you despise modern conveniences like heating and electricity? Would you rather use your non-existent survival skills to live in the wilderness alongside the birds and the trees? Maybe you wish to return to Monkey. Well, recently, the survivors of the Don't Starve world have had a similar revelation. Fueled by the frustration of character downsides and inability to run, the denizens of Don't Starve have now pioneered a way to transform themselves into simian copies of themselves. Why? Good question. Why don't we find out together? Recently, I've been making videos on other games. Go and watch them. Now, just hold on 1 second while I beam some subliminal messages into your brain. Yep, just sit right there. Okay, we're good. You should now feel a sudden and unrestrainable urge to watch these videos. Hang on. Something's not right. Ugh. I feel like something awful's about to happen. Ugh. Oh. Well, this is inconvenient. It looks like I'm stuck here, at least for the time being. First, let's go over the less monkey-like things added in this update. A bit shocking that the Return to Monkey update adds the very modern conveniences that everyone's so afraid of. But whatever. Curse of the Moon Quay adds a number of boating upgrades to the game. I'm always eagerly anticipating these. Anything to pad out the tediousness of sailing the world. The first of these is the Grass Boat, a hastily thatched together raft made of nothing more than plant fibers. This boat is small and can't be upgraded or built on in any way. Oh, and its health is constantly draining, although notably it can't spring leaks. This tool might seem useless at the surface. Why would I want to be constantly sinking on the open ocean? Well, the grass boat is extremely cheap to make. 8 grass and 2 sticks is all you need. Meaning if you're a depraved resource hoarder like me, you're always going to have the requisite ingredients on hand. So if you're ever stuck on a distant isle, or your main boat's about to sink, the grass boat makes an excellent panic button. It's also quite handy if you see one of Pearl's bottles near the shore in the early days, before you've obtained a proper boat. If you're particularly gutsy and have lots of grass, you can also use it to explore the ocean straight away, but this is pretty risky for obvious reasons. In this situation, you'd be better off using Woody's Goose transformation instead. Next are the 2 bumpers, made of kelp and seashell. These upgrades are attached to the room of your boat and provide some insurance against your terrible sailing skills. These are, needless to say, invaluable as a sailor, even though they rudely take up a lot of your limited building space. Still, with some planning, you can easily fit them alongside all the other required boat stuff. Next on the list is the cannon. Now, I won't lie, I was pretty excited for a weaponized addition to your boat, but the cannon, as it is right now, is kind of a letdown. It's extremely pitiful when it comes to damage and range, feeling more like a glorified spud gun to fire. Especially considering that every single shot costs gunpowder and stone, you'd be better off just boarding your enemy and hitting them with swords, the old-fashioned way. There's also the issue that there isn't really anything to shoot with the cannons on the ocean, and although this update does add a new floating target to the game, it's still much easier to deal with it using melee weapons. Complementary to the cannon is the rudder, a new boat upgrade which can be used to rotate your boat. Surprisingly enough, this was never a feature beforehand, and personally I don't really see why this has to be its own structure and can't just be an inherent feature of the steering wheel. It doesn't make sense in relation to how real boats work, and it's also annoying having to account for yet another boat controlling item on your raft. That being said, it's far from necessary, and is mostly needed for just aiming cannons, which makes them extremely clunky to aim and fire, because by the time your boat has sluggishly turned around, your target's probably moved again. There's also the Sea Trawler, a buildable fishnet that catches fish. Pretty straightforward, just load her up with bait and wait. Substantial amounts of these can save you loads of time catching fish, and can make for a great bit of passive food income. The Nautopilot Beacon and Nautopilot Kits are the final addition to your arsenal of boating gear. When I first tested these things out, I quickly gained the false impression that they were useless. The crafting descriptions and their names seem to imply that they're used for setting an autopilot route of sorts, allowing you to automatically get pulled to the paired Nautopilot Beacon from any distance away, which conceptually seems quite nice. Why worry with unnecessary oar work and just let fancy magnets do the job for you? In reality, the Nautopilot system only has an effective range of about 1 screen. So I sat there quickly documenting the system was useless. Maybe it's bugged or there's an oversight. But no, apparently its main use is actually tethering 2 or more boats together, which is actually super cool. So this is definitely a neat addition, but the descriptions and especially the name had led me to believe that it had some other purpose. that's everything in regards to new boating equipment. These new items are mostly pretty cool, although I do wish the rudder and particularly the cannon were a bit more usable. The update also adds a recipe for docks, buildable land tiles that can be placed on the ocean. These are brilliant. It means you can expand your base onto the ocean, properly this time, although only on shallow waters, and not only that, but they look amazing too. An excellent addition to anyone's seaside base. There's also a proper sandy turf now too. Although shell beach turf has existed for a while, it definitely looked a bit off and not really like a normal beach. Now the possibilities for proper beach builds are practically endless. I just woke up from my noonday kip in the shade. Huh? What's that? Oh, you want to know where to get the blueprints for this new stuff? And how you actually build the docks? And what that mysterious new ocean enemy is? Well, dearest viewer, you saw the thumbnail, so let's not kid ourselves. You already know what it is. Sail the vast seas for long enough, and you'll be able to channel your inner Guybrush Threepwood by finding the mysterious Moon Quay island. Right off the hook, there's no way to actually locate this island aside from just sailing, which is a surprising decision for the devs to have made, considering the sheer amount of people who complained back when there was no way to find Crab King aside from just sailing, which seems to be, I don't know, vaguely indicative that isn't a very fun thing to endure. Once you've finally suffered enough to come across the island, prepare to suffer even more, because the distant shore is swathing with poorly armed monkeys. Easy enough to dispatch on their own, powder monkeys can be quite annoying when they flee after attacking, and when they pincer you in groups. They spawn from cobbled together monkey huts, which can be destroyed, however this isn't advisable as the monkeys are a good source of special items, namely the cutlass and the pirate bandana. The cutlass is a trash weapon that knocks items out of inventories, similar to the monkey's intrinsic ability. However, this is tricky to use since there aren't many mobs in the game that actually have an inventory. You could be a dick to the 3 people who play PvP, I guess. The pirate's bandana, however, is much more noticeable. This headgear will speed up any sailing actions while you're on your boat. Pretty much everything to do with sailing except turning the steering wheel. This hat means you can be much more adept with raising the anchor and unfurling sails, meaning that you generally have much more control over your vessel. It's a super handy upgrade to have when you're tackling the open seas, and is just a really cool idea for an item. The monkeys have one more item drop, but this one might not be as welcome as the others. Accursed trinkets will gradually accumulate in your inventory over time, unable to be dropped. There are 2 paths that you can take using this item. Give the Monkey Queen bananas, each of which will remove a few trinkets from your inventory. Giving her bananas when you're empty of trinkets will net you some blueprints for some of the new things instead. But aside from that, the Queen doesn't really do much. If, instead, you choose to hoard your mostly useless wealth of sticky trinkets, you'll undergo a shocking transformation. You'll become one of the most awful horrors known to man, something that indeed represents a less intelligent version of a Homo sapiens, a monkey. While in monkey mode, all of your character's perks are removed and replaced with the no monkey business ability to run and a liking of bananas. Simple and straightforward. Thankfully, my sanity is spared as there's no monkey speak. Your character appears to retain their intelligence. This is such a strange addition to the game because as it serves, there's not really any purpose to this. If you dislike your character choice so much that you'd rather play as a literal monkey, just change character? The curse itself isn't really punishing since you only need bananas to get rid of it. And guess what? Bananas literally grow in bushes right in front of the Monkey Queen, so it's not really a punishment at all. I'm going to assume that monkey mode is going to get some other functionality in the future, perhaps to do with future updates, because right now it doesn't serve much purpose aside from being annoying. For some reason, Wonky also appears alongside every other character in the main menu. It feels extremely odd to have what is, I think, meant to be a punishment transformation appear as a character. Like, it's not a character? I suppose this is so you can put skins on it, but I don't really know why you want to do that, seeing as there's not much reason to even play in simian form. In a similar vein, a lot of the content in this update just feels off. It's hard to pinpoint exactly why, but I think it has something to do with A, the monkey curse itself, and B, the use of a strange color scheme that doesn't fit into the rest of the ocean content. The transformation itself is just that odd. The wreckage around the portal seems to imply that this was Wagstaff's doing, which makes sense, I guess, but why? It also begs the question whether the monkeys we fight were or are people at some point. But if this is the case, why do they speak like regular monkeys instead of people? Which is what happens when we, as the player, get transformed. I don't hate the idea of some weird pirate curse that turns people into monkeys as a joke. I mean, it's kind of funny, but it's a strange thing to base the content of an update around. Regarding the color scheme, all or most content introduced in Return of Them used a fairly consistent color palette. dark blues and mid-grades, complemented with the occasional note of pastel pink, yellow, or blue. This was a sensible decision, made to give ROT updates their own identity as a separate thing from the base game. Most of the content introduced in this update completely ignores this theme, instead opting for mid-browns and reds, sandy yellows and bright greens, orange for the monkey's fur, and of course this eye-straining fuchsia color used by the portal. I think this is a big contributor as to why the update feels fundamentally wrong, although this may indicate that it's the beginning of a new content arc, similar to Return of Them, that'll have its own color identity. What a nice day to be fishing out on the blue. Hey, maybe island life isn't as bad as they say after all. Huh? Oh shit, what's that? Oh shit, paddle. Occasionally, when you're boating, a ship of monkey buccaneers will launch an attack on you. With all the monkeys paddling, they can quickly intercept and board you, posing quite a threat if you're unprepared. Monkeys themselves don't have much health, but they cut you and their damage will add up. This is a much-needed distraction from the day-to-day routine of sailing, adding a bit of a complement to aquatic counterattacks, something which will surely keep even the most experienced players on their toes. For some reason, even at the time of writing, the level of difficulty that the monkey buccaneers bring is kind of unhinged. The monkeys love to steal all of your items, break specifically only your sails, and then leave if you don't try and fight them off. This means that it's very easy to get stranded, and if you don't have enough wood to make enough oars to row all the way back to land, you're gonna have to ditch your boat and jump off the plank. The monkey raiding ships are captained by a prime mate, clearly the superior monkey due to its possession of the largest hat. Prime mates are harder to kill than the regular cardboard sword-wielding apes, dropping their suave pirate hat on death. The smooth-looking tricorn, apart from being an apt fashion statement, will halve all incoming damage to your boat, and is also a crafting ingredient for the much uglier-looking Captain Feathersword cosplay that is the Polly Rogers hat. Somehow, this hat not only manages to resemble a Wiggles character, but also simultaneously makes the lazy forager completely useless. Hooray. The Polly Rogers will summon a helpful bird that picks up items off the floor near you. No, Polly, don't touch my stash of useless blueprints. Please, leave me alone. Fun fact, the Polly bird looks a lot like a Major Mitchell's cockatoo, which is extremely cool, so honestly, I can forgive the hat for looking like allergy-inducing cosplay attire. Hurt you! Finally, there's a small selection of plants that can be obtained from the Monkey Island. The portal makes all of them easily renewable, although you'll have to wait quite some time to get a substantial amount. Monkey tails are basically more tropical-looking replantable reeds. This is pretty big news, especially for Wickerbottom and particularly for Wort players, reducing the need to base near or in a swamp in the long term. Banana bushes are pretty self-explanatory, although obtaining lots of them can take a while due to the slowness of the portal. They provide a slow but reliable source of bananas, probably now the easiest attainable fruit for use in the crockpot. Putting 2 or more in at once will result in banana shakes, a new dish that has a very high priority, so you'll have to be careful. Finally, palm cone trees are an excellent addition to your beach-themed base builds. However, replanting them is somewhat of a pain, as they only drop 1 cone when fully grown, unlike most other trees. This means that in order to expand your crop, you'll need to wait for the funny portal to give you more. Oh boy, waiting, my favorite activity. This is only really an issue if you want to use them for decoration. If you're simply looking to build docks using the palm cone scales that they drop, you won't have to wait for long. That's about everything added in the Monkey update. In conclusion... Oh, hang on. This is inconvenient. There's still a piece of content that I haven't covered, because I'm definitely not a slow, lazy ass who takes 10 years to accomplish anything, resulting in me missing a major update by a couple weeks. Wickerbottom! Woo! Better sit tight, because everyone's favourite self-worshipping librarian recently got a rework. An update that was, fittingly enough, also hijacked by a certain soul-stealing imp. Wickerbottom can now make a ton of extra books. I won't go over them one by one, but they basically act in similar ways to her old ones, allowing her to skip or bypass certain time requirements. Notably, being able to force a full moon, start rain, spawn a bunch of fish for fishing, and summon some grumblebees to act as guards, which technically makes her a faction character. She can also make a bookshelf to store away her treasure trove of knowledge. Storing books in here will magically stitch them back together over time, allowing Wicker to technically have infinite book uses as long as she's careful. These are definitely some nice additions, but they haven't really changed Wickerbottom's core gameplay loop. Like, at all. And it wasn't one that I was particularly fond of to begin with, partly seeing as to how her perks have near to no correlation with one another. To be fair, this update did exemplify her downsides somewhat. Now, sail food only gives 1/3 of the food value that it normally would, and she flat out can't eat spoiled Munchables whatsoever. This is definitely a good change and has a fair bit of impact in the early game, but once you establish yourself and get a good number of farming books to cycle through a bookcase, well, it's practically nullified. And personally speaking, Wickerbottom doesn't have anything aside from her perks that could really interest me. Someone who believes they know everything and seems to get off from how big they think their brain is not exactly the type of company that I enjoy, virtual or otherwise. If I hear one more Latin name, I think I'm going to start losing brain cells, so I think it's best that we move on to Wortox. Wortox's mini refresh thing allows him to teleport to explored areas of the map, the soul cost increasing proportionally with the distance. He can also perform a soul echo, allowing him to effectively soul hop again for free on screen after doing so initially. Furthermore, healing using souls now restores a small amount of sanity, and he also gains a fair bit more hunger from eating them. These are excellent changes, almost turning Wortox into a sort of budget wonder. More immediate cost for long distance teleports, but skipping the lengthy setup. This is definitely a step in the right direction, and it's good to know that Clay has their eyes on characters that have already been reworked or released recently. And personally, I just think it's hilarious that people seem to care more about the changes that Wortox got, as opposed to a probably now salty old grandma. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching. Blah 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 bye. Ugh. Now I've got to figure out what to do with myself now that I'm stuck out here. Now, I'm sure that I can find a way back to the real world somehow.